Hi guys, and welcome to this month's tutorial focus video. I wanted to start doing like a focus video I'm going to try and aim it for beginners to sort of people who are quite familiar with colour pencil, and I want to cover like different surfaces, different areas, like really try and help you guys out with some, not problem areas, but just some sort of like very important areas of animal portraiture work. So today I am working on Fabriano Artistico hot press watercolour paper. This is in the heaviest weight I can find. It's 640 GSM, £300. Now I hope you can see, hopefully this will focus. It's very thick paper. It's the thickest I can find. I think it's one of the thickest papers on the market. I absolutely love this paper. Now when you are working with Fabriano Artistico, I buy it in the loose sheets. I don't buy it in the pads. I don't feel, and I know a lot of people have told me as well that when you buy it in the pads you don't get the same type of paper. It's a bit bizarre. So I always buy it in the flat sheets. I wouldn't recommend getting it from companies like Jackson's because I know a lot of them turn up damaged. So I buy this from a local supplier. I ask them to buy it in for me. If you've got a local art supplier, just see whether they can get hold of this paper in the big packs for you. That's probably the best way to go. Now when you are working on Fabriano, and a lot of people don't know what side to work on, because this side is like it's got like a grid effect. And this side is almost like a cotton effect. Now I would always recommend working on the cotton effect side, and the way I can tell this is it's the side that has the indent of Fabriano Artistico along one of the edges, and also this bit is like a lot more obvious compared to, like, it's got like a little indent area compared to this, which it's still got an indent but it looks quite flat. This side, it just picks up a lot of dirt. It's not very fun. This side is the best side, and I feel like it takes lots and lots of layers. I've just cut this sheet down into a little square like box type shape. I'm also going to be doing one on pastel matte. I have drawn it out ready to go. This is pastel matte. I have never worked on pastel matte with colour pencil. It gets really dirty though, that's what I'm finding, and it's really bendy. I'm not really sure about that, but anyway, that's for another video. Today I'm going to be focusing on drawing this horse eye. Now I will have attached the file that I'm working on in the attachments for this video, and also the line art. I don't know how other people do the line art. I've just found an app that can do it. I don't personally use the black and white line art to get this image. I will be filming a video how I go about getting my image onto paper very soon, but if you do prefer the line art then I will attach it. If there's any recommendations for that line art to improve it or make it easier for you, then do let me know, but obviously I'll give you the option of the line art and the reference photo, which I just pop on my iPad here. I've got the big iPad Pro, which is I think it's like 12.9 inches. That's what I work on all the time. Right, let me just sort out this image so I can blow it up. I think I might need to save it. Right, okay, now that's sorted. So I think the first thing to think about when you are trying to draw an eye is make sure that you have a very clear reference, very clear reference photo if you can. I've tried to pick the clearest one for you to work from. I know it's got a lot of detail in it, but even if you don't want to look at all the detail, just try and get the contours in. It will make a massive difference if you can start looking at the dark compared to the light areas. So like always, I have my sheet of paper which have got all my colours on them, and that's how I go about finding what colours to use for the reference photo, so I can get a good idea about what colours I need to use. Now to begin with, I've sort of allocated some colours which I think will work. These are sort of like just the standard colours I would use for eyes and nose and you know, important areas of different portraiture work. So I've got some cold greys, warm greys, I've got this all polychromos. I've also got a couple of luminants. I really like the luminance Payne's grey in 10 and 50% because it's got like a more blue area. Now I'm going to film a video all about the different brands of coloured pencils and why I think, you know, not why I think you should buy different ones, but just to give you an overall opinion on what I think that you should start with if you are looking into colour pencil, or if you are thinking about making an investment into some pencils like the Caran d'Ache Luminance, because they are very pricey, but do I think they're worth it, basically. That's the video that I'm going to try and film in the next couple of days. So yeah, so if I just run through very, very quickly the pencils that I'm using, I've got Ivory by Polychromos. These are all Polychromos, by the way. I've got Light Flesh, I've got Dark Flesh, and I've also got Cinnamon here. I've got Warm Grey 1, I've got Warm Grey 2, I think I've got all the warm greys here actually. I've got, yeah, Warm Grey 5, I've got Payne's Grey here, I've got Bista, I've got Burnt Umber, Burnt Ochre, Burnt Sienna, I've got, this is Terracotta and Sanguine. I've got some Cold Greys, Cold Grey 1 and Cold Grey 3, and also Dark Sepia. Now you'll notice, oh, before I drop pencils everywhere, you'll notice that I haven't put black in here, and there was a reason for that, and I'll come on to that. Hang on, pick that pencil up. Right, yeah, I've got black here, but I don't tend to use black unless I really, really have to initially, because it's very, very smudgy, and it can look a little bit flat if I go in too quickly with black, so I try and avoid using black too much. As I said, I've got, from the Luminance, I've got Payne's Grey 10, Payne's Grey 50, and I've also picked out a Silver Grey here, which is a really, really nice, cool, bluey, silvery kind of colour, which I really, really like. And also, sorry, I've also picked out the white from the Luminance, which is one of my favourite whites. I don't like the white from the Polychromos because I don't think it's pigmented enough, whereas this is super, super soft and super buttery, and I really, really like this pencil. I've got, obviously, my fluffy brush, I've got my KUM Masterpiece sharpener, and I've also got my pencil extenders here. The black one takes the Polychromos, and the silver one takes the Luminance, because it's a slightly, as you can see, the Luminance has got a slightly thicker barrel, so it needs a slightly thicker pencil extender. I've also got a large putty kneaded rubber as well, which is really, really effective. I just picked up this one up from Hobbycraft the other day. And also my Tombow Mono Eraser as usual. I will give you a full list of, I'll write full list of materials that you might need for this portrait below. See, I'm trying to be like a bit more professional when it comes to this. Try and make something of this, basically. Okay, so when it comes to drawing eyes, it's really, really important that obviously you need to make it look as 3D as possible. Now, the actual like the eye part of like the what would it be called, the eyeball, I guess, yeah, the eyeball is obviously a circle. So, well, I say it's a circle, you got to envision it like a circle. Obviously it's not a circle, it's more like an oval kind of tapered kind of shape, but you need to really see it as a 3D object. So you're going to have some really light areas, you're going to have some very dark areas, and it's going to curve. So you need to try and think about it as a 3D object, just like sort of like the areas around the eye, they're not flat, so you need to be contrasting your darks to your lights but blending them out very smoothly. But anyway, we're going to get into all of that. Hopefully with the reference photo and the line art, you will be able to get sort of like quite a strong image down on your paper. It's really, really important. It's not, you don't need to get all of the details down, but it's really, really important for you to get the majority of what you can see on the reference photo or the lines on here. Right, I think I've covered all the things I needed to cover before I begin. One thing I will mention is you'll see on the reference photo, it's got, the horse has sort of got a bit of a watery eye. Now, I'm not going to draw that in. I'm going to try and take you through absolutely everything you need to know to draw this eye, so we might be here quite a while. It's fine, I've got all day. I've allocated today to film this video, so where to start? Now, the way I usually start with these portraits is I will tend to work on just picking out some of the really dark areas so I don't lose it, because sometimes if I don't put a sheet of paper down and to rest my hand on, then the pigment of the graphite can lift off quite easily. So I tend to just try and map out roughly where my darks are going to go compared to where my lights are going to go, and the way I do this is with the dark sepia pencil. So you just try and move my reference photo around. Let me put that a bit closer, move you up a bit. Right, hopefully that will work. So when I am looking at an eye or any area like that, now my eyes, because I've been doing this for so many years now, my eyes can see literally every single detail, and I know there's a huge amount of detail in this in the eyeball. You don't, as I said at the start, you don't have to add everything in. I will add as much as I can add in, I guess, but it's not really that essential. Now, one of the most complicated things to try and look at is knowing where to start, because I have put I've almost put too much detail down on this this sort of initial line sketch drawing, and it's going to make it quite hard for me to kind of figure out exactly where I need to start putting a pencil to paper. But so I'm just going to try and get stuck in. I'm going to go in with really, really light pressure. I'm just trying to work out exactly where, as I said, I need these dark areas to go, but I don't want to go in too heavy because I might make a mistake and I might have to lift off some of this pigment. Now you'll notice that I'm not removing the graphite, the line underneath it, because where I'm going over it with such a dark colour, it doesn't really matter that it's graphite left underneath. When it comes to working on a really light area, I will always remove that graphite. So I'm just trying to, as I said, just trying to work out exactly where some of these really dark areas need to go. So at this stage, I spend quite a long time trying to map out exactly how the piece is going to go. Now you'll probably see that the inner corner of the eye, there is still a lot of detail in here. Now it's up to you when you want to put that in. Sometimes if you put too much detail in, it just won't look, sometimes you can just overkill it and put too much detail in. I'm going to put a little bit in, but I'm not going to go crazy with it because first of all, I don't have time really, and second of all, it's a bit pointless to put that much detail in. So I'm just, as you can see, I'm just trying to map out roughly where sort of like the really light areas. I'm keeping the areas that I can see that are like really, really light, I'm keeping them completely white. Another thing that I think is really, really important is, like, these are quite solid black lines. This isn't a solid black line, so you don't want to put in a very, very harsh line here, because you're going to find it very, very hard to transition it into the light area sometimes, because if you put a very solid black line here, it will look quite flat, and it's not a flat area. The curve of this lower eyelid, is it a lower eye? Lower, you know what I mean, the bit here. So everyone's got their own ways and means of drawing eyes, and this is just the way that I have learnt over the years, and it's the way that works for me. I just map out the dark areas at first. What I think I will also do is just try and figure everything out initially. See, the problem that I've got now is I try and put too much detail in almost, and it's not really worth it. So I'm going to try and not put all of it in and just put some bits that I think will need to be in. Right. Now obviously you can see the like the eyelashes are coming down in front of or over the top of this eye, so I'm going to just leave those bits blank. I'm not going to fill in those bits, and then carry on going round to try and figure out some more darkness and mapping out where those eyelashes are going to go. Now obviously I am doing things quite slowly today for two reasons. First of all, I really want to make this a super in-depth video. I want to cover absolutely everything, and I want to show you how you can achieve, you know, as realistic as possible. Obviously you don't have to take as much time as me doing all of these steps, but I just want to break it down so this video is like suitable for all levels. Whether you're sort of like a bit further on with your colour pencil work, or whether you are sort of just starting out. I want this to be a super accessible video for everyone. So I'm just gonna, you can see at the top of this eye is a very, very dark black area, so I'm just gonna map out where sort of that starts and ends. You'll notice that I'm not going over every part of this with the dark sepia. I'm not going over all the lines. I'm just going over the lines which do look like black to me. It's really important, I think. This is one of the most important parts of the eye, is to really make sure that, you know, you've got all your line work properly in. Really take your time with trying to figure out exactly, you know, to create almost like a map on your paper. If you spend the time doing this, if I just turn you slightly, if you take time doing this, then the reward will pay off massively. It's interesting actually, because obviously the eyes are the focal point, so it's so important to spend obviously the majority of your time like working on an eye or something like one of the most important areas. You can't rush, especially if you're like a commissioned artist. The eyes are so important. Another thing that's really important too is making sure that you keep a really, really sharp pencil. The sharper the better. And that's why I really, really like the KUN sharpener, because you can just replace the blades when they get a little bit blunt. Again, it's the same as what I said with this line down here. I'm keeping my lines very, very soft at the moment. I don't want to put too much pressure in on anything. Right, now I'm going to start looking at some of the inner bits of the eye and just seeing exactly where I want some of the darkness to go. Once you get a little bit more confident with exactly with where the dark areas are going to go, you can start going in a bit heavier, but I wouldn't start sort of going in really, really heavy and covering all the dark areas, because then if you do that, then when you work on a very light area like this, it can smudge, the darkness can smudge, it can make this look really muddy. Now, one of the things you really don't want to do when you're working on highlights is you want to leave them as crisp and clean as possible. You don't want them to look smudgy, as it can just make everything look really dirty. It's okay when you're like working on an area that's going to be quite dark at the bottom, you can get away with it then, but I wouldn't recommend doing it. Another really, really great thing, and another sort of thing that I would recommend people doing, is if you think that you're getting a bit complacent with one area, turn your paper around and work on it upside down. It just keeps everything fresh, it keeps your eyes fresh, it keeps your mind fresh, and because sometimes, you know, you can think that an area is going to work in a certain way and you'll draw it in that way, whereas if you turn everything upside down, it really confuses your brain. So then you'll be forced to draw literally everything or exactly as you see it on a reference photo, rather than what you think you see, if that makes sense. Right, I think what I'm gonna do now is it's really hard to sort of know exactly where to go next with this. I'm just gonna make it some areas a little bit darker. I know some people will go in and finish like one whole area and then move on to the next, but I'm not going to do that with this eye. Yeah, as I said, when I get a bit more confident with where I think things are going to go, then I can put a little bit more pressure down and sort of just start mapping areas out. Okay, I think I'm gonna leave. No, I'm not. You know, I'm gonna take a little bit more time to do this. As I said, I think it's one of the most important things that you can do is making sure that you've got a really, really strong foundation. One of the most complicated things that I find is sometimes when you've got a lot of, like, there's a lot of different lines that are going around here, it's very easy to get lost and get confused as to what lines go with what thing, but you just got to try and work it out as you go. Right. Now, this reflection in the eye is so clear, it's ridiculous. You can literally see the person standing in the middle taking the photo. So it's up to you whether you want to include all of those details. You could, you know, this area is quite dark in the middle, you could kind of create as a dark area and then light, really light area at the top. Obviously you've got trees going up here, you've got a fence post by the looks of it, and you've also got, by the looks of it, someone else walking through here. You can probably see some mountains up here, and then obviously you can see the bottom of the horse's eye down here. There is a huge amount of detail in here. That's why I think it was, you know, hopefully you'll think it as well. It was quite a good reference photo to use because it's super, super clear. But it's also, you can kind of put as much detail as you want or as little as you want into it as well, depending on your style of drawing. It gives the ability for you to sort of really put a lot in or a little. Right. So as you can see, I mean, I've spent almost 20 minutes just trying to put in the foundations. Now I know that it's not always viable to spend a long time doing something like this, but if you are charging, you know, a lot of money for your portrait work, then it's really, or not even if you're charging a lot of money, if you want to build up to the point of charging a lot of money, then, you know, unfortunately, it's like with all these things, you've got to really sort of sacrifice and take some time to build something up if you want to make it work. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to grab I think I'm going to use like a mid-tone brown, so I'm probably going to use, what shall I use? I think I'm going to use like warm grey 2, possibly. Oh, do I want to, no, I think I'm going to use coal grey actually. I'm going to use a mid-coal grey. This is coal grey 3 I'm going to pick up now. And I just want to start mapping out roughly some areas in the eye. Now I'm using quite a light pressure, and when I say light pressure I mean that I'm obviously putting pencil to paper and I'm not pressing into the paper, I'm just going over the surface just to try and sort of just put some pigment down. I'm not putting any pressure at all. Right. Now I've sort of mapped it out a little bit more, then I know I can go in with dark sepia again and just go over some of the areas. I know this area is a bit darker, so I'm just going to pop in, fill in this area here. And again, I'm using such a light pressure because this, one of the things with the polychromos is they are quite pigmented, which is great. And obviously everything goes through like a messy stage. Every time that you draw something, you're probably going to feel a little bit uncertain with how it's going. That's absolutely fine. The great thing about Fabriano Artistico paper is it can take a lot of layers, and as long as you're gentle with your layers and you don't really hammer into the paper, you'll be able to change and lift like pigment off, and you'll also be able to just, you know, work through any mistakes that you might make. It's quite a forgiving paper to use, in my opinion anyway. Now obviously please bear in mind that for all these videos it is just my opinion. Right, he's got like a little light area up there, so I'm just going to leave that like it is. I'm picking up the cold grey again, again with just like cold grey 3, and I'm just going over some of the sort of like the lighter areas I can see in the contour of the sort of like the corner of the eye, just making sure that it's super smooth. It's going to look a bit flat and it's going to look a bit weird, but it's fine because we're going to go over it with such some really sort of dark, harder tones soon, so and some harder pressure, so it doesn't really matter. It is chucking it down here. The weather is abysmal. It's so bad, but it's fine because we're spending the whole day drawing and it's my favourite kind of day. Okay, so I'm just picking up dark sepia again, and I'm just gonna start just going over exactly, as I said, just building up these layers, making sure everything is looking as good as it can do at this stage. Just transitioning between the two. When I find that when you've put a couple of layers of pencil down, then you can start sort of use. I'm trying to explain this properly. When it's like a solid dark area, then I use a slightly more harsh pressure, and you'll notice that I will, after a couple of pencil strokes, and I've spoken about it before, I will always change around my pencil to keep everything super sharp. It just stops me sharpening the pencil too much. So when it's like quite I know it's going to be a very dark area, then it's fine. I can sort of go in quite with a heavy pressure. No, I'm not going to bring it in too close to this line here because, as I said, I don't want to make this bit smudgy. But I'm just gonna, just to give you a bit of a demo, when it's a bit like this, I can press quite hard, and when I'm going over you know, the cold grey, I use a lighter pressure and it just helps blend it all together. And I won't go in really sort of like backwards and forwards. I'll go in with very short strokes just to blend everything out. So he's got like quite a dark area around his eye. So now I've figured out, like now I know that that line is going to carry on. That's a really dark area. And I'm going to sharpen his pencil. I'm going to really make that line dark. As soon as I feel like the pencil is beginning to feel a little bit too soft, and I haven't got like the harsh crisp line that I want, then that's when I'll turn it. That's when I know I need to turn it and get to a sharper point again. Now I'm just going to pop in a little bit of the cold grey in this little section here and then go over it with the dark sepia. It's just because I can see there's a little bit of lightness in that section of the eye. It's actually beginning to look like an eye, isn't it? I mean, it's taken a half an hour to get to this stage, but it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Hopefully you can follow along with this. I'm really like hoping to be able to offer a lot more content like this over here on Patreon, because if the coronavirus has taught me anything, it's taught me that, you know, people have got to support each other and help each other out, and I really want to bring you the content that, and sort of, I mean, I wouldn't class myself as an art teacher. I haven't got any teaching qualifications or anything like that, but I've been doing this job for around about 5 years now, and obviously I've built up quite a good following and things like that, so I feel like I've got quite a lot to offer. So hopefully that you feel the same and you can like follow along. Right, okay, so I'm using Payne's Grey. I'm just going to start going, you know that cold grey that we put down initially? Then I'm just going to go over it with some Payne's Grey, and then blend it out with some dark sepia. You remember what I said about using a lighter brush and very short sharp pencil strokes over the top to blend it? That's exactly what I'm doing now. I'm paying very close attention to the fact that there's like a blue sort of hue that goes up here, and yes, it does get darker, but I think what I might do actually is I might just pop some Payne's Grey, because it's sort of like a very dark bluey kind of grey colour at the top here, and then I can like filter it down almost. Okay, right. Now, next job is to figure out this section over here. Now, it's got a couple of eyelashes that are gonna come down at some point, so I want to In fact, they don't come down that low, so I can just go over and just really make sure this is as dark as it needs to be. And I'm gonna blend this into, so obviously you'll notice that it's very dark at the top and then it comes into a light, sort of like a grayer area, but it's very like blended together. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to pick up my warm grey. This is warm grey 1. I'm just going to put a very light base layer down, and what I say light, I mean really light. I'm literally pencil to paper and that is it. And then I am going to grab my I need another warm grey. I don't think I've got warm grey 3 here actually. Let me just grab that. I've got like a multitude of spare pencils here, which I did impulse purchased before coronavirus because I was worried that I wouldn't be able to get to all my supplies were going to shut. Have I got that? That's warm grey 2. Right, here's warm grey 3. Going to sharpen it. I ordered 2 new battery packs for this camera as well, which means that I will be able to continually work with this camera, which is great. I'm really excited about that. And I'm also going to hopefully have that Elgato Camlink, which I've been waiting for it to come back in stock for like the longest time. Hang on, let me just explain. So this is a warm grey, and I'm just putting again like another base layer down over the top there, and then I'm going to grab warm grey. This is another warm grey. I think this might be like warm grey 5 possibly, I don't know. It's got, if you've got a polychromos, it's the 274 at the end, but obviously mine's so short that I can't see what pencil it is anymore. And then I'm just gonna, with very short sharp motions, I'm just gonna start blending from the top down. So as you can see, this is like 3 or 4 layers I put down here, and the paper can definitely take some more. So I'm just gonna, what I don't want to do is, you can see that line and it's quite harsh. I just want to soften that slightly. So I'm just gonna move backwards and forwards very gently with the warm grey, and making sure that I go over the pencil that I put down here, just to make sure that it looks as soft as possible. And then I will grab my dark sepia again, come back to the top and follow the same procedure. Obviously make sure that I don't go over too far down, otherwise it's going to ruin the contrast I've put in. So I'm just going to work from the top, make sure this is super dark, and then it fades into a lighter area. Just blending out any harsh lines that I can see. Right, and there's a line that goes up here. There's also a little line that goes up here. So I'm just gonna make sure that I've covered all of them. And then I'm gonna grab my warm grey 1 again, and just very lightly, I'm literally not even touching the paper. Well, obviously I am because the pigment coming down, but I'm using the lightest pressure just to blend and almost like burnish over the top. And then go backwards and forwards a little bit with dark sepia. Some warm grey 3 here as well. towards the end when we do add the black, that's when everything will start coming together and start popping. Just want to darken some of these areas. I'm putting quite a heavy pressure down now. I'm really sort of trying to work the pigment into the paper. Right, so you can hopefully see that is quite a blended area. Right, the next thing I'm going to tackle is this sort of bit that's coming down here. So I'm just using a cold grey, without snapping the lead. That's one of the problems I find with if I'm not careful enough, I'll snap the lead. So I'm just going to use cold grey. Actually, I need to clean that off. I've got my mono eraser here. I don't want to keep these lines, these graphite lines, in here for this bit, so I'm just going to try and remove them. See that the Tombow mono eraser is so great for little details like this, because I literally wouldn't be able to get in there with any other rubber. I would 100% recommend this. They're not massively expensive, they're an absolute game changer for me. So I'm just going to pop in some cold grey. As I said, this was cold grey 1, and I'm just taking it onto both sides, like between both areas of the dark, and I'm just using sort of like a light pressure here, not doing anything too crazy. And then I think from here I'm gonna grab my Payne's Grey. This is Payne's Grey 10 from Luminance. I'm just popping it in the pencil that's under here because mine's a bit short. Would really recommend the pencil extenders as well. I just got mine from Derwent, they're fab, because it just means I can use all the pencils, because these are pretty expensive. They're really worth it though. But yeah, as I said, I'll film another video all about the pencils. Might do it over on YouTube actually, because I feel like that's not stepping on anyone's toes on here, I don't think. Right, I'm just grabbing the Payne's Grey as well. And this is cold grey 3. Just because I want it to look blue, but I don't want it to look like super blue. What I might do as well is just grab some Payne's Grey 50 from Luminance. I'm just going to sharpen up. One thing hopefully you can see that I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that I'm putting enough layers that the tooth of the paper is quite smooth. You'll notice that this is a smooth paper, it has got quite a bit of texture still on it. So the one way to combat that, because I know that when I first started working for Fabriano, I was a bit confused as to how everyone could get like the most amazing like soft blended areas, but yeah, you just got to put some base layers down. And sort of like a slightly warmer colour here, so I'm just going to pop into more grey and blend it out with some Payne's Grey. I'm gonna be needing some other colours soon, I think. Some other warms and cold greys. One thing I would say is that obviously the reference photo is very blue, like it's got quite a lot of blue, you know, around this bit here, and in the, obviously in the eye it's a reflection of the sky, so that's going to look very blue anyway. But it's almost like it's taken under such harsh, like, contrasted sunlight. So obviously if you can't get it to as blue as that, because I know it's a little bit daunting to use like a blue pencil on such like on an animal. So I mean, I probably wouldn't go in with sort of blue colour. I'd use some Painsbury and sort of go for a slightly blue but safer, more neutral effect, like I'm doing for this bit of the eye here. So again, I'm just going backwards and forwards with different options here. I'm just blending it into different areas. Let me just grab that. Okay, now obviously there's a lot of darkness through here, so I'm just going to start to add that in. I'm just using my dark sepia. One thing, I've said it before in another video, and I'll say it again now, is that if you feel like you can't, if your pencil isn't giving you the effect that you want, if it's not showing pigmented enough, if it's not coming through as sort of strong with the colour, then just sharpen the pencil, get it to a sharp point, because I think what happens when you're working with a slightly, I haven't got a spare piece of Fabriano to show you. Let me find a spare piece of Fabriano, 2 seconds. Okay, so I've just gone and found a spare bit of Fabriano. I'm just also going to find a blunt pencil, or a pencil that needs some sharpening, like this one. This one needs a bit of sharpening. When I go over it, when I just use like a light pressure and coat the surface of the paper with a blunt pencil, this is obviously the result that I get. It's very, very patchy. It's nothing special. No matter how many times I go over it, there's a lot of grain of the paper showing through. If I sharpen it, and get a point like that, which is what I get with my KUM Masterpiece sharpener. If I did it the same exercise, so light pressure, and go over it a couple of times like I did with the other one. Can you see the amount of less grain that's showing through from a sharper pencil compared to like a blunt pencil? Especially if you turn it every couple of seconds when you feel like it's getting a bit blunt, you will cover so much more area. And obviously if you put a base layer underneath that, so if I was to put down some, let me grab my cold grey. This is cold grey 1, and I did 2 areas of cold grey, and I used a blunt pencil on one and a blunt pencil on the other, and a sharp pencil on the other. Right, so just putting down some base layer here. Let me find I need to find a blunt pencil again now. to, or just the pencil's not massively sharp would be great. Okay, so let me just, this one isn't sharp, as you can see. It's how I bought the pencil, really. I'm using a light pressure. It covers well, and it's a lot smoother, so that's why it's super important for you to put a base layer down, because you'll get a much smoother effect than you would if you worked on something like that. And then if you were to sharpen it, and did the same exercise. The pencil comes through super smooth and super pigmented. And this is just a mid-tone grey. So that's why, first of all, it's super important. It makes such a difference to have sharp pencils. Second of all, it's so important to put a base layer down. So here you have no base layer, unsharpened pencil, no base layer, sharpened pencil, base layer, unsharpened pencil, base layer, sharpened pencil. Hopefully you can see the difference. It makes a huge difference when it comes to detail work. And a lot of people say to me, how do you get such... Anyway, side note, right. Okay. I'm just gonna start bringing down the cold grey under the eye here, because that's where my sort of focus is taking me at the moment. I feel like when I work on eyes or anything that's quite intense, then I let my, I just work on bits that I think, I jump around a little bit and I just work on bits that I want to work on, and then without forcing myself into a corner of working on something, if that makes sense, because in my mind then, you know, the chances are you know what I mean? You know, I don't feel like I can explain very well. You know, I'll give it my all, basically. So right, I'm just, obviously I'll pop down some cold grey there. I'm just gonna blend back and forth with the sepia. So this is another little hint and tip. I'll put down some sepia. I'll make sure that, you know, it's as dark as what I need it to be without going super, ruining the tooth of the paper by going super intense. And then I will add sort of like the contrasting colours. One thing I would say, when you're working on an area like this, it's probably more crucial for you to put like your lighter layer down first, and then go back in with your darker layer, because otherwise you might smudge it, your really dark areas, and it can make the portrait look a little bit muddy. So I'm just popping that down and going backwards and forwards with my cold grey, and I'm just going to pick up a darker cold grey as well. I did have a cold grey 5 hanging around at some point. Don't know what's happened to it. I think it got so short, actually. I think this was it, but it got really short. Here's cold grey 5. Okay. Now, obviously, I haven't sharpened this, but for what I need it for, it's not really a be all and end all. I just want to go over a couple of bits. gone over that. I don't know whether the camera will pick this up, but it is obviously using a Coldgrey 5, it does look like there might be not a lot of contrast in between here, and there's not an awful lot, and because I've blended it out and make it, I need it to look super dark, but I just want there to be a slight indication that there's a bit of like lightness through the bottom of the eye here, so because otherwise it just might look a little bit flat. And another way of doing this is obviously by going in and grabbing black, but I will do that, but not just yet. Now the next thing I need to do is tackle sort of like the nuances and areas here with some darker, different colours. I'm going to grab my Coldgrey. It's Coldgrey 5 again. But I think it might be a little bit too dark. I'm going to use Coldgrey. This is Coldgrey 4. I can always go in with Coldgrey 5 at the end. But do you see what I mean? Like, hopefully you can see that because this pencil's super sharp, it's even going over some of the darker areas. Now I wouldn't recommend going in with the intention of doing that. So what I mean is I wouldn't go like draw this whole area black then think that you can lift it back off with going in with a lighter area, but it doesn't always work, so I wouldn't risk it. I feel like everything's very quiet when I do stuff like this. Normally I've got like podcasts and stuff I listen to so many audiobooks, but obviously doing this it's kind of restricting. I don't like actually Netflix have released a lot of new stuff recently, which is some of it's quite interesting. But yeah, the studio just feels very quiet. I think I need a dog soon. Just some company would be really nice. Plus, like, I'm not gonna bore you with like the ins and outs, the pros and cons of getting any animals, because I've been after getting that. I used to have studio rabbits. I used to have rabbits in here, like little house rabbits, and they're amazing. But they're little destroyers. I've just picked up Coldgrey, so yeah, they used to like attack. Didn't used to attack the studio, but like they used to get during the night. You could hear them sort of like trying to pull up the carpet. My dad wasn't very happy, obviously. But yeah, I had rabbits for like 6-7 years. They were really good companions, really great pets. Okay, so some of these light areas, I'm using, this is Silver Grey and it's a luminance pencil. I'm just going to pop in some of the lightness, and obviously it's not super light, so I'm just going to pop, sort of just try and blend the edges out a little bit to make it look a little bit more natural, like so. Same with this bit. I'm just going to, it got a bit dirty. Oops. I'm just gonna, I think I'm gonna try and put some Payne's, this is Payne's Grey 10, and I'm just trying to blend out the harshness of the dark sepia that I put down, and also the top of the lightness. So a bit like that really. Now you can probably see that I have put some pigment down here because I don't want it to look super bright. I'm just going to lift some of it off actually with some of my Mono Tombow eraser. I could go in with some white at the end just to really brighten it, or another thing that I've seen quite a few people do is they get sort of like a white gel pen and just really accentuate the highlights. And again, you know, you could do that if you really wanted like a really bright white effect. But again, I mean, I think once we go in with some of a black towards the end, then hopefully it will start looking a lot more dark and a lot more contrasted than it does already. Right, so that is that bit done, I feel. So I'm just going to keep coming around here because I want to start adding some darkness without going too close to that line. And then I start working on the iris. Is it the iris? Is that the middle of the eye? The eyeball. I'm interested to see how well I can make the eye look on pastel matte. Now I've got pastel matte paper, I haven't got the pastel matte board, and I know that a lot of people rant and rave about the pastel matte board over the paper, so I'd be interested to see how that fares with my sort of technique and my style of drawing. Okay, right, next thing I'm going to try and tackle is this bit along here, which is obviously very light. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and remove, you can probably see there's a little bit of pigment that's come over, so I'm just going to try and remove some of that, clean it up. Get rid of all of this, and then I'm going to use, I want it to stay really as light as possible, so I'm going to use the white from the Caran d'Ache Luminance. Just tracing that line across. And then using the silver grey just to give it a little bit of pigment through it. And then after I've done that, I'm going to use Payne's Grey by Luminance, Payne's Grey 10 when I sharpen it. Just to add little bit of a blue tone. Now I'm going over the bottom line, which is where the black's going to go, because I feel like that is going to make it a little bit easier to blend and it won't look as harsh, that line. Now I need to soften this line up here, because you know what I said to you when I first started this video about making sure the lines were really smooth for the contrast, and that is what I need to try and do now, is soften everything out. I'm just going to pop down some silver, some Payne's grey through here before going in with what I might use is I might use Payne's grey from the Polychromos. To really sort of pull some of these fine lines, that I've really made the pencil as sharp as I possibly could for this. I know there's like a software thing that you can get, so you can attach it to like your iPad and stuff and make sure that everything's in focus, but I feel like I'd need another iPad, because obviously I work off this one. I'd need another one to keep the camera attached to, so I could see that everything was in focus. But that is definitely something that, you know, obviously the more content I put out on Patreon and the more support that Patreon gets, then that is definitely, I might put as another goal to get another iPad, so I can really sort of make sure that everything is a good quality, the audio is good quality, because at the moment it's sort of a bit, it's not hit and miss, but because I think I've got a good idea about how to make this camera in focus now, but it's still a little bit risky sometimes, so it's definitely something that I'm gonna look into. So I'm just gonna grab my Payne's grey 50 as well and just soften that line through there, and then I think I'm gonna grab my Payne's my stock sepia. Just sort that whole thing out. Yeah, so the I think I was telling you earlier about the Elgato Camlink, which is what I've been waiting for ages to come back in stock on Amazon, and I feel like ever since coronavirus, like with everyone trying to webcam and stuff, and people obviously like going more online and stuff, the Elgato Camlink was like out of stock for forever, and then according to Amazon it's meant to come back in the next like week or so, and that hopefully means I'll be able to do live streams, which is really exciting. I'm just grabbing some coal grey so I can sort of darken up some of this area through here. It needs to be a touch darker. Yeah, so that is what I'm gonna be hopefully doing next week, is bringing you some live streams. Right, I'm just grabbing silver grey, and one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove some of my graphic lines because I don't want them. I don't need them. They are just a way of me seeing where I need to go. So I'm gonna grab some silver grey. You can use the cold grey if you are just working with Polychromos. You could probably use cold grey and then go over it a little bit with some sky blue. And it'll probably give you, if you use a really light pressure, it'll give you slightly bluer but a very similar effect. I'm just gonna grab on this. And then using like a mixture of all the different Payne's greys that I've got to create some sort of like contrast and obviously some softness. And you can see some of the wrinkles and nuances in the eye, and it's up to you obviously how much detail you want to add here. I like to try and put as much detail as I possibly can because that's the sort of person I am, but you don't have to do that too if you don't want to. Just using some, this is just dark sepia. I'm probably going to blend out a little bit of some cold grey actually, because why not? And then some Payne's grey just to darken up some areas through here. Oh, without snapping a pencil lead, that would be fab. Right, I'm just popping in some dark sepia under here. And you'll see that this line isn't always like massively straight, but we can come back and adjust that later. That's not, obviously, it's not massively important at the moment. What's important is to try and get these sort of lines a bit more blended. Now I'm just mapping out this, like as I did when I first started this video, I'm mapping out where the lines need to go for this. Now going under the eye, in fact I'm going to use a Payne's grey because I think it was going to give a nicer finish. Use a Payne's grey and I'm just mapping out exactly where things need to go. And again, I'm just using I'm using Cold Grey 3 here. I'm going to blend it out with some Cold Grey 5 and then bring it down with some dark sepia into this bit. Just using mid to light pressure just to bring everything down. I just want it to look dark and seamless. I think that's my aim here. In fact, I'm going to use some Payne's grey. And then go over it with some dark sepia, I think. Now obviously when I'm going into the dark areas, I am using a little bit more pressure because I do want to sort of hammer into the paper a little bit more to make the darks as dark as they need to be. Remember, as I always say, and I repeat myself that I'm blue in the face, the thing that makes things look realistic is comparing the darks to, you know, your lights. Your darks need to be really, really as dark as possible, and your lights need to be light. So now that is in there, can kind of start looking at the actual eye. Now, I don't know where to start, and I've been putting this on. I've like done the whole way around the eye without actually touching the eye yet, haven't I? Right, it's fine. I'm not going to put it off anymore. So what I'm going to grab is I'm going to grab some walnut brown. And because this area down here is super dark and it's got a lot of shadow in it, I'm just going to grab some walnut brown and I'm just going to map out where I want this dark area to go. Now, no, it's not white. No, okay. I thought I'd seen something there, but I hadn't. My eyes were deceiving me. So I'm just going to put in some walnut brown. And what I can do from here is I can start blending this, because this is quite a flat brown. I really like this brown for doing really dark, sort of rich, quite flat brown areas. I'm using a very light pressure here, but I'm just sort of really hammering it into the paper a tiny touch. Then I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab some dark sepia and just try and roughly work out exactly where these lines are going to go, because there are a couple of lines that are going around this the eye, so I just want to roughly map out where they're going to go. I'm not using too much pressure because the contrast of the eye, I'm going to use, what colour are we going to use there? I think I'm going to use a mixture of some warm greys and possibly a touch of cold grey over the top. So I'm going to initially start off by using cold grey, warm grey 2. Yeah, oh no, this is warm grey 3. I'm going to use warm grey 2. And I am going to go over it with a touch of cold grey. I'm going to use cold grey 3. The idea of the cold grey and going over the warm grey, it just gives quite a neutral but quite deep colour. It's really nice, and obviously my aims here are to flatten the tooth of the paper and allow the dark colours to go over the top. Now I've got cold grey here, and I don't think I'm going to want cold grey, I think I'm going to want warm grey. So I'm going to grab my warm grey pencil, and this is warm grey 6, and I'm just going to, like what I did up here, this is such a dark area that I really just want to blend it. And I'm going to go backwards and forwards between some cold grey and some warm grey and really transition that colour down. And the way I can transition is just by lots and lots of layers. I don't know how this will work on other papers, if you're using another paper, how many layers, it just depends. You'll have to experiment with the paper that you're using to see whether you can achieve it with lots and lots of layers. So I'm using cold grey. This is cold grey, no it's not, it's painted grey. I shouldn't be using painted grey. So important note to self, always check what you're picking up. This is warm grey. This is warm grey 6 again. I'm just using a very very light pressure. I don't want to press too heavy here because I am going to have to go back with a slightly lighter colour. I'm probably going to use cold grey. This is cold grey 4. and almost burnish into the paper. Using warm grey here, again using the same kind of technique. I'm going to try and use some different colours. So I'm going to use some warm greys followed by some cold greys and just blend everything together. The great thing about colour pencils is you can kind of, instead of like paint where you're blending onto a palette, with colour pencils you can kind of blend onto the surface, but you've got to be quite confident with the colours that you're using, and obviously also the surface. You've got to be aware, you've got to make sure that your pencils can take, not your pencil, sorry, your paper can take what you're asking it to do. So just you know, try and make sure that you are pretty confident that your paper can take the what you're asking it to do, because otherwise you can spend a lot of time doing the foundations and then almost not ruin it, but you know what I mean, you just got to be quite careful. So I'm just picking up my dark sepia here. And this is such a dark area that I'm just going over some of that walnut brown that I put down. Using quite light pressure because I do want some of that brown to show through. I don't want it to look flat. And blending it into sort of the corner of the eye as well, a little bit. One colour that I think I might end up using here is, if I can find it, here it is. It is Cocoa by Caran d'Ache Pablo. Now this is sort of like a halfway house. It's a browny grey colour and it's really, really nice for, I love the Pablos for smoothing areas. Obviously I want to keep the line work that I've put in here, but I do want it to be slightly softer, so that's where the Pablos come in super, super handy. Right, I'm just going to grab some warm grey and I'm going to start putting that down some of the really dark areas that I can see, and then that means I can go over with the dark sepia and it won't be as flat looking, because obviously I've put down a bit of a base layer underneath, but it doesn't really matter. I'd rather it be too dark at this point. If there's like a really dark area, then I can use quite a dark base layer instead of using like a cold grey 1 or something.